Rabbi Jeremy Scher. This week's Torah portion is Toldot, in which we read about the lives and the troubles and the family struggles of Jacob and Esau, the children of Isaac and the grandchildren of Abraham. And it's a theme that continues, I think, throughout the book of Genesis, the theme of sibling rivalry. And this week, we're going to be discussing Parashat Toldot, this reading, at Ha'emek, honest, inclusive, progressive Judaism in Silicon Valley. And so I'd like to invite you to join us this Friday night, December 2nd. I've attached a link to the event on Facebook. And this is going to be the first of just a few short videos in which I want to explore the topic of our Torah portion, and in particular the topic of sibling rivalry. And I want to start this morning by giving you a sort of a mystical introduction to the act of creation. So it may not be completely obvious at first how this connects, so stay with me. But, you know, we learn in the sacred texts of Judaism, all of them really, and certainly in Kabbalah, that before the world was created, the presence of God filled everything that was, to such an extent that there wasn't room for anything else to exist at all. And we still believe that the presence of God permeates the entire world. And, you know, at the highest spiritual level, it's still true that we're all God, that God, everything is God, and we, and God is everything. We're all part of God, and I really love the phrase "everything is God," and I do credit Rabbi J. Michelson for publishing a whole book about it that is entitled "Everything is God," and it's just a great truth at the highest level in Jewish spiritual thought. But kind of down here on Earth, we get to have a world created. And I just love the sun's coming in the back window as I'm talking about creation. That's kind of neat. We'll be, as soon as the traffic jam kind of moves on, I'll be turning the car a little bit. So what God does in the creative act is an act of great divine mercy. And God contracts. And this is the doctrine of tzimtzum, which means contraction. So God contracts in order to make room in the universe for us, you know, and for the whole created world, for the sun over here, for the, you know, the traffic jam, and the workplace that I'm going to over at the hospital in San Francisco, and you and me. So you could say that the world is not as good, in a sense, as it was before creation. Now, is that to say that we are bad, that humans are bad? No, Judaism does not teach that. We do hear that from other traditions sometimes, but that's not the teaching of Judaism. It doesn't mean that human beings are bad. It means that we're just sort of not as good as God, which to me is sort of an uncontroversial idea. Certainly given all of our problems that we face. And that's the whole point. So creation happens when God makes room for sentient beings of free will who aren't perfect and who have to work through our problems and who have to work through our problems together. So imagine a glass or crystal ball, just a nice, perfect sphere, and think how clear it is, and it's really something, because when you look into it, you don't see much of anything. It's just kind of a perfect sphere of transparent glass, let's say. Now, suppose we break that sphere, and let's just suppose we kind of break it into two pieces. And we kind of put the pieces together so that they're next to each other so that they fit, but it isn't going to be the same as it was. Instead, what you're going to see is you're going to see that break within the sphere. So there's actually something to view in the sphere now, where before the breaking there wasn't. And it's that break that, to me, sort of corresponds to the creative act here. Everything that exists is the making of a distinction. You know, you're either a car or you're not a car. This is a car. I'm not a car, I'm a person. And, you know, you're either a person or you're not a person, and so on, etc. I have a blue, what is this, a vest, fleece. So some of those categories overlap, but it's still a making of a distinction. This is not a fleece, this is a t-shirt. And so on and so forth. Yarmulkes, right? Steering wheels. So everything that exists in the world is the making of a distinction. In that sense, it's kind of like a breaking of that glass ball. And in a way, it diminishes the perfection of the sameness of what was before the creative act. So that's kind of a mystical introduction. It's my take on the creation story as retold in Kabbalah. And what in the world does it have to do with our problems today? And what does it have to do with Toldot, with Genesis? So I want to say, when I read the book of Genesis, and this Torah portion with Jacob and Esau is a prime example, I keep reading the same story over and over again. It's the same sort of scene. Robert Alter, a great scholar, calls it a type scene. And, it's like, it's almost like a genre of movie. There's a sibling rivalry story going on here. Time to pay a toll. Hope I have my $5 to talk about distinctions being made. I don't want to get a ticket. So what we have is a sibling rivalry type scene that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating through the book of Genesis, right? We have Cain and Abel, starts right out. We have Jacob, with Jacob and Esau this week. We have Abraham and Ishmael. Joseph and his brothers. And so there's kind of a twist. There's always a twist, but it's the same story of sibling rivalry, sibling rivalry, sibling rivalry, sibling rivalry, sibling rivalry in every generation in Genesis. It's never easy. It's always a story of sibling rivalry in the book of Genesis. So, and it has literary value because, it wouldn't be so interesting if everybody just got along. I'm not even sure that such a text would have stood the test of time. A story of everybody getting along is a fine morality play. It's a good demonstration of how best to be, but it doesn't really reflect the reality of the troubles that we deal with. And denial, as we learn in the next book of Torah, ain't just a river in Egypt. So to me, the sibling rivalry that keeps coming up symbolizes, in ancient literary terms, the story of creation and the splitting of the perfection of God, of the perfect sameness of God, into distinctions. And mystically speaking, the creative act gives those distinctions, those opposites, a chance to reconcile out of their love and out of their free will. And in that way, that process of reconciliation that I believe the history of the universe is all about, that process of reconciliation gives us a chance to elevate the elements of distinction and difference and rivalry that exist in the creative world, and to build a world of love, and to build it ourselves, along with God as co-creators of that world. It gives meaning to the creative act. Why in the world would God do this? Why would God interrupt what was perfection? but to give it a chance to reconcile, to give it a chance to split and come back together in love. And to do that, we have to work through some very difficult things. So that's been kind of a 10-minute introduction to where I am with this Torah portion from a mystical perspective and from the perspective of mystical creation. Stay tuned for a little bit more, especially as we turn to talking about the current world. And please join me at HaEmek. One of the reasons I'm making these videos is I will not be talking for 30 or 40 minutes at HaEmek. That isn't going to happen. Nobody wants to hear that. So this is just in a little bit more depth, but we're a great community. Jessica Leash is serving as cantor, and we're going to have a fantastic Jewish renewal service this coming Friday, December 2nd. Please do click through to the Facebook event to hear about the details, and if you are in the area, I hope to see you there. Thanks a lot. I'm Rabbi Jeremy Scher. Have a great day.